Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So there's a lot of fumes in my lungs right now, my chest, my throat, and sometimes it can make it sound a little harsh, a little hard to listen to. Bear with me. This is an important video because a lot of times when I wash out my mouth, peroxide, water, mouthwash, whatever I might use, when I use toothpaste, and they make it hard for me to get toothpaste from the store, mind you, there's always something wrong with it, but I use toothpaste. And I take a lot of time cleaning my whole mouth. It ends up sounding weird still, and I have to talk for a while, and by the time it starts sounding more normal, the fumes start coming in again, and so on and so forth. So this is something they've done for many years and that they've refined here. Now, with that being said, this video is about videos I made back in 2014 or so, 15, when I was actually calling people names. Now bear with me, you'll see that there's a good reason for it. At that time, in those particular videos, I was calling people racial names. And it was around the time I looked more handsome than anyone that's ever lived, before they edited the videos and went out of their way to keep me from martial arts, because my martial art intention and my motives, my heart, would be expressed in my face. But this video isn't about me looking handsome. I'm not some arrogant person. I'm not some narcissist that looks in the mirror all day. Okay? Even when I was the most handsome person that ever lived, in a sense I still am, but at those moments where it was clear that I didn't spend all day looking in the mirror. I spent time doing martial arts and trying to look for love and so on and so forth. So I was mad, and I am mad at the whole world, right? It says in Isaiah 24, the earth sinks never to rise again. Isaiah 34, okay, Revelation 18, Revelation 19, right? The whole world is led astray by the devil. The whole world is drunk off the blood of the saints and the righteous. Okay, I was mad, and I knew that people identified as race and racial, they identified with their racial cultures. For example, if you went up to a skater and you said, well, why do you skate? They might say, well, it's because I'm white, right? If you went up to a rocker, if you went up to somebody listening to Mexican music, right? Music in Spanish, and they say, well, they're Mexican, that's what they do. So quite often we see that people associated their races with their cultures. Now listen very carefully so you understand that I'm right, and then I was right to call them names at that time. That's a tough one to understand. Bear with me. You'll see that I prove my point. Just give me a chance to explain here. So as people identified that way, and we look at martial arts, in martial arts, everyone on some level knows that the martial artists who were the greatest in all of human history were black people. We see the evidence with the Shaka Zulu idea, right? But there's people who went way beyond that. We see the evidence with the Martin Luther King and the Nelson Mandela, right? When you have that character and that superior physical prowess, that you're going to win. And they often make the mistake of thinking that Kung Fu and karate and not so much Taekwondo, but perhaps that too. They make the mistake of thinking that Asians are magically the masters of moving energy and mind, body, soul, and spirit. They make that mistake. And it's heartbreaking, because a lot of people are emotionally invested in that. And so when you correct them, like right now I feel some kind of way about it because I know there's people who don't want to hear it. But it has to be said. Me personally, I've said this many times in my videos, especially when talking about this issue. Asian people quite often are very friendly. They have, nice food, nice style, and I can go on and on. A lot of them are very book smart. Okay. A lot of them are very polite and diplomatic. But, I'm just kicking the ballistics here, telling the facts here. So when we look at martial arts, a lot of these groups, they kind of withdraw. They don't want to argue about racial issues, and it's a mistake. Well, we'll get to that. It's a mistake not to set the record straight on this issue and as fast as you can, because it's a huge part of martial arts. We see that there isn't a single famous African martial art that is known as such. Capoeira actually comes from Angola in Africa, but it's called a Brazilian martial art. I want you to think about that for a second. Why is it called a Brazilian martial art when it actually comes from Africa? I'll explain their justification in a moment. And also, when martial arts in general come from Africa, why do we think of them as coming from Asia? It's very strange, right? Well, it's part of a system that treats black people as less than human. It's funny you see these conservatives arguing that America is not a racial country. Well, it's not so funny, but you get what I'm saying. When we still have a extremely martial arts, excuse me, extremely racial and racist martial arts system. And on top of that, the churches, for the most part, are not just racist, but clearly racist. And so are the synagogues, and to a large degree, the mosques. So when your religions and your martial arts, both the main centers for like building character, are racist, when people are raising their kids to date their own race or to date whoever has money, they only date outside the race for money instead of and social norms instead of for character, you have a very toxic and very, very sinister and evil system, very much so. So as I was looking at this situation, I looked very good in a Chinese kung fu gi. I bought like 10 or 12 of them. I liked them so much, and I'd wear them when they're new, and when they started getting crumpled, I'd get rid of them. And I kept like 4 or 5 of them. Well, no, I wouldn't get rid of them. I'd keep them, and I'd wear them, as I'd wear them to town under a sweater, or I'd wear them to sleep, what have you. Okay, so I would try not to wear them in the videos, but I have a lot of videos where I'm wearing a crumpled gi because I wore it so often and I'd be inspired to make a video. So I started thinking about the deeper implications about the fact that I was, the deeper implications have to do with the fact that I was wearing this Chinese kung fu gi instead of an African martial art gi. And I was wearing a beanie that said Cali on it, and it was like associated with white people or snowboarders, what have you. And when you think about a uniform and what it represents, right? The word uniform and uniformity. So the system has a certain uniformity with racism, with eugenics, with social engineering that comes from Eurocentric thinking. When martial arts are actually, in reality, in their true form, really more African-centric because they come from Africa, right? And people think about the masters of old and so on and so forth. And a lot of white people have hijacked and they whitewashed it. So even though martial arts come from Africa, we have American Kickboxing Academy, we have American Karate, American Taekwondo, right? A bunch of white instructors pretending to be the experts on life and martial arts and religion and so on and so forth. Okay, white, Jewish, and LGBT, very much LGBT these days. So back then, before it got this bad, right back in 2014, 15, it was a lot more serious. People were more serious back then. They were starting to transition to an LGBT society, which is what I would argue is a society and the planet we live in these days. It's mostly LGBT with some privileged worms pretending that they're superior because they're not so LGBT-like. And obviously I'm not gay, not LGBT. But back then it was very serious. And back when I made my first martial art challenge in 2012, it was very serious. And I had achieved the most effective martial art body in human history. Focusing on focused moral intensity, focus on intense martial art workouts instead of long, drawn-out, endurance-based martial art workouts and so on and so forth. So my exact formula had proven to work better for me than any other system. And therefore my system, with the type of person you'd expect to be the master of that system, the main master, went beyond other systems. So they would cheat me in terms of giving me my rightful place as the spiritual leader of all humanity. They would cheat me in terms of, having influence in the public sphere to change things, in terms of economic advancement, money, in terms of the admiration of potential wives. And by 2014 or 15, I had started to read from a book, Fighting for Honor. It's also by another person of Igbo descent who was a professor and an assistant professor. And he, his name is T.J. Dushobi, he had put it in the introduction to his book that the most honored of ancestors was the transcendent martial art hero. And the book was about black capoeiras, capoeistas in Brazil. To a large degree, it's about Igbo martial artists in Brazil and the Americas and how they were fighting for honor and resisting white supremacy and white people's arguments in regards to them thinking that they're superior and that they're the master martial artists. And it's about the triumph of the black martial artists over all other groups, really. Now, and in terms of the morally precise, the ones trying to be morally precise, the ones who actually had their honor intact. As well as I'm looking at this world, right, and I'm very familiar with gangs, right, the black gangs are basically Crips in the prison system, basically Crips, Bloods, 415s who emphasize their San Francisco-based culture and not an African martial art culture. The Kumis, which was like a clandestine black prison gang, secret society like black prison gang. Same with the BGF, the Black Guerrilla Family. And none of these groups emphasized being a black warrior specifically, at least not past a certain point. But you had, the Hispanic gangs, you had the Nuestra family, and you had the Mexican Mafia, who were very much known for their Aztec arguments, which emphasized the idea of being a warrior with a certain spirit, has, its race and culture, and so on and so forth. Then you had the Aryan Brotherhood, right, which was very much about white people trying to proclaim that they're warriors. And so, as we look at the systems and why exactly they're ignoring the elephant in the room, okay, which also connected to martial arts is the idea of the elephant tusk in Igbo culture and Zulu culture. It has very much to do with being a warrior and a martial artist. And we see that Zulu spear and shield work is considered a valid martial art, but it's not that famous. Even though when we think about the ancient version of every race, we don't think that other races would have much of a chance against Zulu warriors, right? But yet, people don't understand that these people didn't get into that shape from playing basketball, and they're not subhuman. They got into that shape from being martial artists better than everyone else on the planet. And Africa was like the martial art pressure cooker, okay? They're not from a different species, right? They're Homo sapiens, right? Not from a different species in terms of how scientists would describe it. They're Homo sapiens. They just happen to fight better in hand-to-hand combat because of the superior mind, body, soul, and spirit. Now, I'm not trying to be racist. I'm not a racial supremacist, but these are the facts here. And this is why they cheat black people. It's why they all work together wittingly and otherwise to deny me my rightful place. Because they have their cultures which are based in what I would call Setian philosophy. The idea of people settling for being a racial supremacist, settling for being a traditionalist, settling for cheating the universal leader out of his right to lead for mere race, for mere human rules, customs, and traditions. Mark 7, for mere race, for mere flesh. The word selfish is a play on words for see flesh. They see flesh and not spirit, not universal pinpointing moral precision. And so, and again, I'm not just saying that because I'm in the Detroit area and it's 75% black around here. That's not what I've been saying this the whole time. I've been saying when I lived in Morgan Hill, which is like 2% black. And I had no plan to ever move to a mostly black place. I'm not a bully. I'm not a black supremacist. I'm not like, hey guys, the main cities that kill the most people are black cities. And, if you had a problem, come here. I don't care about that. I don't care about arguing who would win in a street war, who would win politically. I don't care. These are mere worldly matters. I'm focused on the central idea that matters. And on top of that, other people aren't smart enough to obey God through me and to rally to me anyway. So I'm standing on my own 10 toes as a man, no matter where I go. If I lived in Nigeria, same thing. As a man, as the King of Kings, as the Son of God, as Christ. So when I say this, it's different than when other people say it. The white man starts talking about these issues as somebody who's cheating everyone with the Jew and the LGBT community to the extreme, who's controlled opposition or the main people doing it, the main aggressor, what have you. They don't have the moral high ground. It doesn't have the same sincerity and genuinity. Genuineness or whatever the word. It's not as genuine. And so as a result, it is insane to not see that I'm right. That's part of why they suppress my videos, because they're still in 2026 not man enough to not cheat me. When it comes to their ruling councils that the other members of their races and cultures obey, they don't have the heart to say, he's Christ, and accept the consequences. A man will do what is right, especially where it matters most, and accept the consequences. A punk-ass little kid will say, my race, and act like some kind of a fucking bitch. And you all know that very well. Shame on you if you want to pretend that's not the case. You all know that very well. Shame on you. And so, at the time, I was swelling up with anger. Like 33, 34 years old, somewhere between 32 and 34 years old. And I make several videos back to back. I just start calling them every racist name in the book, because the way they were insulting me goes beyond people in prison calling each other racist names. And I identified as a gang member at the time. If I remember correctly, the time period is right here. Somewhere between, because I stopped being a gang member, I stopped identifying as such in 2015. So I started calling them racist. And said the theft was far beyond stealing a spread or a soup in the prison system. It went far beyond drugs. It went far beyond women and conceptions of respect in a shallow way. It went to the very heart of being a righteous person, the very heart of being a soul brother. And I wasn't going to stand for it. Other people aren't as tough as I am. They were like, no, we'll stand for it, we'll stand for it. And act like some kind of bitch, but I was not going to stand for it, and I'm not going to stand for it. I'd rather die because I'm a warrior, not some kind of craftsman fucking bitch. Some crafty snake ass, punk ass bitch. Fuck that. And so I started calling them names. And keep in mind, I also was critical of African Americans and Africans and black people in my videos. But at that time, because I identified, if I'm not mistaken, as a gang member, I started calling them names because that's how a gang member responds to some degree. And the issue was extreme. It was the most racial issue ever possible. Nigerians are blacker than black. They're blue black, and the Nigerian top martial arts of all humanity is the essence of what it means to be an African. And mankind was naturally meant to be black because their native land is Africa. It's not Europe. It's not America. It's not this. They're natives from Africa first and foremost. I've explained this many times. They have no viable counterargument. So they rejected who they are in reality and they reinvented themselves after they migrated out of Africa. And then they turned around and said, we're superior to you and we're going to use scales to cheat you. Okay, and it's so fucking, I'm not proud to be part white and part Jewish as a result. I'm glad I'm from a black African patriarchal line because their ruling groups, they absolutely refuse to be a man. And it is so painful to watch. I've said this many times, and it needs to be said all day, every day. It is so painful to see them go out like scared little girls, afraid to man up, afraid to lose some fair weather slut or their shallow position in the government or something. And I'm not even concerned with their slut or their bitch ass less than a fucking Boy Scout position in the government. Or a bunch of fair weather pussies pretend they're important. It's something that's just psychological. It's fucking bitch. Psyche is a bitch in Greek mythology. And I'm not insulting real women throughout history. I have nothing but respect for any woman who's actually a woman throughout history. There's almost none of them these days. I have nothing but respect for that. But any female that fails to be a woman is just a dumb sissy ass bitch. And Psyche's a dumb sissy ass bitch. And her consort was Eros, a little fucking kid, a little kid ass bitch, and her little fucking bitch boyfriend. Okay? Babylon System, Baby Line, Rothschild Child, Nicole Kidman Kid. They're fucking on some Lady Gaga, Goo Goo Gaga, bitch ass shit, and I'm a fucking man. Fuck that. And so I called them the fuck out. And at the risk of seeming racist, I'm not racist. I'll say I'm proud of it. Because they went there like a racist little bitch, and I put them in their fucking places. And fucking like 11 years later, they have no counter-argument. They were wrong. They deserve to be called names. Any ancestors that they have that were honorable, and I pointed this out back then, would realize that I'm right to do what I'm doing, and they would be fucking ashamed of their pathetic descendants, period. So really quickly, as I relive it, when I think about it, I know that I'm right to feel that way. That's why in 2026, I haven't corrected it. For those of you who are confused about it, think about the Bible. The real chosen people of God are the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. And so other people who try to oppose that are like Philistines. Everyone else is like some kind of pagan tribe that refuses to live the way, the truth, and life. And I'm not saying this because I'm magically racist. I'm not. But because it has to be said. We are all Africans first and foremost, and people are in various cultivative cycles that are bringing them down and their offspring down. And when you want to cling on to psychology like some punk-ass little kid, it is disgraceful. But because I'm the better man, and I'm not trying to be some kind of condescending person or some kind of tyrant, I'm not those things. Because I'm the better man, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you feel that I've treated you unfairly at any point, and if the righteous man should be sorry for that, then I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry for anything that God doesn't want me to be sorry for. You define your races by your actions. You define yourselves as individuals by your actions and your families by your actions. Okay? I have a profound desire to get along with the other races. I was engaged to a white woman. I've been in love with Asians and Islanders and Hispanics and on and on. I have a profound desire to live in harmony with them. But I haven't been treated fairly by the planet, and like 99% of it, in a sense, is racist and racial. The reason why is that they're racist, and they're hyper-racial. And they're even letting whites, Jews, and LGBT, whether they're white, Jew, and LGBT, control their races and make them more and more unnatural, even transhumanist over time. Like, what the hell can they say? Can they say they're offended because they value their race so much that they handed their kids over to a bunch of racist, satanic, white, Jew, and LGBT elitists to rape in the fucking ass and to, give them a place in their corporation and then hand over their kids in turn and so on and so forth? That's fucking retarded. So I should be insulted that they would think that they should be insulted. when they've handed over their races right to the devil, tail tucked.